أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم رسولا ونبيا. رب أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك رب أن يحضرون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Continuing on with the Prophet Alayhi'Ssalaam's legendary government military legacy, the era of Sayyidina Umar bin Al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. We're picking up from page number 311 and 12 in reference to Sayyidina Umar bin Al-Khattab radiallahu anhu's sayings. And he would say also to the people in the marketplace who hoarded goods, Allah sends us provisions. Then when it comes to our marketplace, some people hoard it because they have extra gold and keep it from widows and orphans. And then when the importers have left, they sell it according to what they decide. He rebuked them sternly for that. Umar radiallahu anhu will intervene, or he would intervene to impose a suitable price for essential commodities when such interventions were necessary to protect the consumers and merchants. A man brought some olive oil, which he began to sell in the marketplace for a price other than that which people usually paid. Umar said to him, either sell it at the market price or leave our market, for we will not force you to stick to a price. And he made him leave the marketplace of Al-Madinah. These are the rights given to the merchants and the consumer, obliging merchants to know what is halal and haram in buying and selling. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu would beat with his stick anyone who sat in the market and did not know the rulings. He said, no one should sit in our market who does not know what riba is. He would walk around in the market and hit some merchants with his stick and say, no one who should sell in our marketplace, or no one should sell in our marketplace except one who has understanding of the rules of Al-Islam. Otherwise, he is going to consume riba whether he wants to or not. Interesting. You have so many consumers and people in the places today who do not know Islam, and there you have it. You have a lot of riba going on. No aspect of running the state took more of Umar's attention radiallahu anhu at the expense of another. For the ruler should not lose balance. Umar radiallahu anhu set out guidelines for the merchants which were suited to the market to regulate exchanges and guarantee stability in the market. There were to be no bad deals, cheating. No bad deals, no cheating or hoarding, no black market, and no ignorance of what is and is not permissible in the world of trade according to Al-Islam. He issued a brief and comprehensive decree that put an end to all corruption and regulated everything. Whoever does not have an understanding of the rules of Al-Islam should not deal in our market. Unlike, again, what we have today, people who do not have any knowledge whatsoever are all involved in actually running our market. So there you have it. This is akin to the issuing of laws nowadays. So yours truly had mentioned this, such as the rule that no one should undertake a certain job unless he has a certificate or license in such and such a field. States nowadays organize and supervise the markets by setting up chambers of commerce, and they like to regulate the marketplace and put the public mind at rest. Umar had the distinction of being the first to do that. He did not leave the marketplace in chaos. Rather, he appointed supervisors to watch over it and keep it in order. He appointed Sulaiman ibn Hathama in charge of the market. He appointed As-Sa'ib ibn Yazid as his agent in charge of the market of Al-Madinah, along with Abdullah ibn Utbah ibn Mas'ud So there was a supervisor in charge of all markets. Then each market had its own supervisor. It is certain that this attention to the organization of markets played a great role in relieving people of a great deal of hardship in getting what they needed. If the ruler pays due attention to this matter, he will be better rewarded by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Umar's good actions prove that Al-Islam is suited to all times and places, all places that is throughout the world. It motivates backwards nations to advance and keep advanced nations from declining and collapsing. It does not block the way for those who want to advance, and it does not leave the negligent to get carried away in their negligence. Continuing on with page number 314, Umar's command the people to work hard and encourages them to earn a living. Umar radiallahu anhu used to urge the people to work hard and earn a living. It was narrated from Muhammad ibn Sirin that his father said, I attended Maghrib with Umar bin Al-Khattab. He came to me and I had a small pile of clothes. He asked, what is this you have? I said, some clothes. I come to this market and buy and sell. He said, O Quraysh, do not let this one and others like him control trade, for it is 1/3 of leadership. It was narrated that Al-Hasan said that Umar bin Al-Khattab said, whoever tries to trade in something 3 times and not make any money out of it, let him move on to something else. End quote. Umar radiallahu anhu said, learn a profession, for soon one of you will need a profession. End quote. And he also said, and I quote, were it not for this buying and selling, you would soon become dependent on people. End quote. Another quote, earning in which there is some menial work is better than begging from people. End quote. Another quote he made was, if one of you wants to buy a camel, let him choose one that is big and fat. Then, if he does not benefit from it, he can still sell it and make a profit. End quote. He also said, O poor people, lift up your heads and engage in trade, for the way is clear, and do not be dependent on people. End quote. And he also said, none or no one of you should refrain from earning a living and say, O Allah, grant me provision, when he knows that the sky will not rain down gold or silver, and that Allah grants provision to people by means of one another. End quote. Then he recited the ayah, then when the Juma Salah prayers end, you may disperse through the land and seek the bounty of Allah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة ليوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع, until you get to فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. So this is Surah number 62, Ayah number 10 in Surah Jumu'ah. Omar saw a young man and liked him. He would ask, does he have a skill? If the answer was no, he would say, I am no longer impressed. And he said, there is no situation in which I would like to die apart from jihad for the sake of Allah, more than if death were to come to me when I was traveling with my camels for the purpose of trade, seeking provisions by the bounty of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, and recited the ayah, others traveling through the land seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's bounties, siru fil ard, and ila akhirihi, amshu fi manakibiha wa kulu min rizqihi. In Surah number 73, ayah number 20, Umar's feared that prominent Muslims would give up trade. Umar bin Al-Khattab radiallahu anhu entered the marketplace during his Khalifa, and he saw that the majority of traders were Nabateans. This upset him. So when he had gathered the people together, he told them about that and rebuked them for abandoning the market. They said, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu has made us independent of the market by means of conquest that he has granted to us. Umar bin Al-Khattab said, by Allah, if you carry on like that, your men will need their men and your women will need their women. End quote. Umar regarded that the prominent Muslims, very important that the prominent Muslims apart from the Muhajirin, of the Mujahideen, shunning the marketplace and failure to strive to earn a living was suspicious and fear. 3.2.4 Omar's night patrol. Very important, very dynamic when it comes to the night patrol of Sayyidina Umar bin Al-Khattab. Everyone take heed to it. There can be no doubt that the night patrols al-Asas formed the basis for the police. Some historians have stated that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was in charge of the night patrols at the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and that Umar bin Khattab took charge of the night patrols himself. He used to bring his free slave Aslam with him, and he sometimes would bring Abdurrahman ibn Auf with him. Night patrols refer to going around at night and keeping a lookout for thieves and evildoers and others whose evil is feared. We should rightfully regard this as the step in establishing of the police force of the Muslim Ummah, because the believers used to guard themselves and prevent evil amongst themselves during the day. Then when they went to sleep, the night patrol took over the task of guarding them. Then when the members of evildoers increased and they began to commit evil openly in broad daylight, there was a need for guards to keep a lookout during the day too. So the police force was established as a permanent patrol. Umar himself used to guard the Muslims, and that helped keep him up to date with what was happening in the Muslim society. In the city of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which at the time was the capital of the Islamic State, a meeting place for all peoples and the seat of government. He would walk in the streets at night to see and hear for himself what his agents might hesitate to tell him or what they might fail to pass on to him. How many rules he laid down, altered, or abolished according to situation. There follow some examples. Prohibition of hastening to wean infants. It was narrated that Aslam, the freed slave of Umar bin Khattab, said some merchants came to Al-Madinah and camped in the prayer place. Umar said, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, shall we go and guard them tonight? He said, yes. So they guarded them overnight. They prayed, and Umar heard a child crying. He went towards him and said to his mother, fear Allah and look after your child. Then he went back to his place. At the end of the night, he heard the child crying again. So he went to his mother and said to her, woe to you, what a bad mother you are. Why has your child not stopped crying all night? She said, O slave of Allah, I am distracting him from nursing, but he refuses to accept that. He said, why? She said, because Umar does not give a stipend except to children who are weaned. Umar had allocated a stipend to every child who was weaned. He said, how old is this son of yours? She said, so many months. He said, woe to you, do not hasten to wean him. When he prayed Fajr, the people could not hear his recitation clearly because of his weeping. He said, woe to Umar, how many of Muslim children has he killed? Then he ordered a caller to cry out, do not hasten to wean your children, for we will give a stipend to every child born in Al-Islam. And he wrote instructions to the effect to all regions. What a beautiful story this is, and how great was his justice. Thus every newborn was recorded in the state records and allocated a stipend from the Baytul Mal of the Muslim state, because the Baytul Mal belongs to all Muslims, and the one who is in charge of it is trustee, and it is not permissible for him to dispose of any of it unlawfully or to withdraw anything from one who is entitled to it, setting a limit on how long soldiers can be away from their wives. One of the results of Umar bin al-Khattab's night patrol was that he went out one night to patrol Medina, and he heard a woman in great distress saying in a verse. She had said this in a verse of poetry, rhetoric. This night is too long and I cannot go to sleep, for I have no one to sleep with. By Allah, were it not for Allah, I would have made this bed shake. Umar said, "May Allah have mercy on you." Then he sent her some clothing and money and wrote a letter to her husband to come to her immediately. According to another report, he went and knocked on his daughter Hafsa's door, Ummahatul Mu'minin. And she said, "O Amir al-Mu'minin, what brings you here at this hour?" He said, "O my daughter, how long can a woman put up with her husband being away?" She said, she can put up with a month or 2 or 3, but in the 4th month she will lose patience. Omar wrote that the soldier should not keep away for more than 4 months. This was how Omar set a limit on how long a soldier could be away from his wife, and no one disputed with him concerning that. As for the soldiers who did not adhere to this limit, Omar checked on them before setting a limit. After he found out the names of those who had been away for a long time and had not sent any maintenance to their families during their absence, he wrote to their commanders asking them to give them the following options. They were either to return to their wives or send them sufficient maintenance or divorce them. But if they divorced them, they were obliged to send maintenance to cover the past period, protecting the honor of the mujahideen. Another result of Umar's checking on the people at night was that he protected the honor of the mujahideen. He went out one night and walked around Medina, and he heard some lines of poetry which contained something dubious. In the middle of the night, a woman was expressing her wish for wine in the company of a handsome young man who or from whom she had always longed. Whether that was a real wish and she meant it, or said it simply as poetry without meaning it, whatever the case, the words appeared dubious. She started to say lines such as, "Is there any way to get some wine and drink it? Is there any way to reach Nasr ibn Hajjaj?" After hearing this, Umar sent for Nasr ibn Hajjaj the following morning and saw that he was the most handsome of people, with splendid hair. He ordered that his hair be shaved off, but that only made him more handsome. He ordered him to wear a turban, but that only made him more handsome. So he expelled him to Basra, lest women, or at least women, be tempted by him, and so as to block the means of temptation and protect the honor of the soldiers who are guarding the border for the sake of Allah. This action of Umar shows the far-sightedness of his public policies and his wisdom in giving precedence to the public interest. The fact that Nasr was so handsome is very important to note, and that the soldiers were away from their wives, and that people felt at ease and secure in Al-Madinah could have led to fitna. So it was better for this spoiled youth to be sent to military towns such as Basra, where he could gain experience in fighting or benefit from seeing the heroic actions of real men. Basra, which was a military town at the time, was the best remedy for such a young man. And even till today, male need to experience military, formation or military studies at West Point. But we'll get to that. That's a different story altogether from West Point. It's on page 320. A woman whom Omar had heard was afraid that he might rebuke her. So she sent him some lines of verse in which she said, "Tell the Imam who is respected and feared, what do I need of wine and Nasr ibn Hajjaj? I was referring to Abu Hafs by mentioning someone else, and all I wanted was to drink milk and relax." Umar sent word to her saying, "I have heard something good about you. I did not expel him because of you. Rather, I heard that he enters upon women and I cannot trust them." Then Umar wrote a letter to his governor in Basra, and the messenger stayed there for several days. Then a caller cried out, "The mail of the Muslims is going to leave, so whoever wants to send a letter, let him write it." Nasr ibn Hajjaj wrote a letter in which he said, "In the name of Allah, the gracious, the most merciful, for the slave of Allah, Umar, the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Then he wrote some lines of verse in which he questioned why he had been expelled because of a woman saying some silly things. Umar said, so long as I am the ruler, he may not return. So he did not return to Al-Madinah until after Umar bin al-Khattab radiallahu anhu passed away. There is a similar story in which Umar went on his night patrol around Medina and heard some women talking and wondering which young man in Medina was most handsome. One of them said, Abu Duyaib. Umar looked for him and found that he was one of the most handsome of people. He said to him, rather, you are a wolf for them. Go and never stay in the same city as me. The young man said, if you are going to do that, then let me join my cousin Nasr ibn al-Hajjaj. They were both from Banu Sulaym, and Umar let him join his cousin in the military town of Basra. This action of Umar bin al-Khattab was dictated by the situation of the Ummah and is consistent with his strong inclination to make the most of individual potentials. Umar's era was one in which the armies were mobilized and all those who were able for it were sent to the jihad fi sabilillah to fight in the way of Allah. So how could Umar hear of these two young men who were in Al-Madinah, although there was no reason why they should not go to the front line? Expelling them from Al-Madinah was better than leaving them to compose poems and sit with women. Very important. Will you carry my burden for me on the day of resurrection? It was narrated that Aslam, the freed slave of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, said, Umar went out to Harat Waqim and I went with him. When we were in Sarar, we saw a fire burning. He said, Oh Aslam, I see here some travelers who are being held up by the night and cold. Let's go. So we went running, and when we came near to them, we saw a woman with children. There was a pot set up over the fire, and her children were crying. Umar said, Peace be upon you, O people of light. He did not want to say, O people of fire, so he said, people of light. So she responded by saying, and upon you may peace be. He said, may I come closer? She said, come if you can do some good, otherwise leave us alone. He came closer and said, what is the matter with you? She said, the night and the cold held us up. He said, what is the matter with these children? Why are they crying? She said, they are hungry. He said, what is in the pot? She said, water to calm them down until they go to sleep, and Allah will judge between us and Umar. He said, may Allah have mercy on you. How could Umar know about you? She said, how come? He is in charge of our affairs, but he is not aware of our situation. He turned to me and said, let's go, telling his slave, let's go. So we set off, running until we came to the room where wheat was stored. He took out a sack of wheat and a little fat and said, hoist it up onto me. I said, I will carry it for you. He said, will you carry my burden for me on the day of resurrection? May you be bereft of your mother. So I hoisted it up onto him, and he set out running, and I ran with him. When we reached her, he put those things down. He took out some of the wheat and said to her, prepare it for me, and I will cook it for you. He started blowing beneath the pot, and I saw the smoke coming out through his beard. He cooked it for her and brought it to her and said, bring me something. So she brought him a vessel, and he poured it into it. Then he said, feed them, and I will spread it out to cool down for them. He stayed until they had eaten their fill, and he left the leftover food with her. He got up, and I got up with him, and she started to say, may Allah reward you with good. You are more suited to be the Khalifa than Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, say something good, and if you go to the Amir al-Mu'mineen, you will find me there, inshallah, Allah willing. Then he walked some distance away from her, then turned to face them again and waited a while. I said to him, is there anything else? But he did not answer me until I saw the boys wrestling, then falling asleep, having calmed down. Then he stood up and said, praise be to Allah, the Exalted, the Almighty. Then he turned to me and said, O Aslam, hunger kept them awake and made them cry. I did not want to leave them until I saw what I saw. Inshallah, we will stop here on page number 323. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa tabaraka asmu rabbik ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.